Welcome into the Backroads Build podcast. I'm Ben, and today we are talking to a couple of people who Bill met on the Bud car this past summer. And you might have remembered, if you listened to the episode we did with Cameron Welch, which he owns the Shooting Star Camp that's along the Spanish River, another person that he met there. These characters were also on that same Bud car trip going from Sudbury up to White River. And I remember him talking when he came off. He's like, we've got to get these ladies in because these ladies are a little older and they decide to keep their youth up by going on these beautiful canoe trips along the Spanish River. But this time it was a little bit different because they decided to tag along with them was their friend who immigrated from France, never did anything like this before, and got to experience nature like we get to on a day-to-day basis, which is really neat. So we brought Catherine and Claire on to talk about their journey through the Spanish River and a little bit about what this canoe trip is and a little bit about some of the differences between France and Canada, and more specifically Northern Ontario. So all of that on the way, but first a word from today's title sponsor, the North Bay Regional Health Center Foundation.
Dear North Bay, you've always been more than a place on the map. You're home to me. This is where I built a life with my husband, raised our kids, and taught in local schools for over 24 years. I'm proud to be part of this community. Earlier this year, my world shifted. After living with anxiety, depression, and PTSD for much of my life, I reached a point where I couldn't keep going alone. Walking into the emergency department at the North Bay Regional Health Center was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But what I found there changed everything. A nurse who made me feel safe, a crisis worker who truly listened. For the first time in a long time, I felt seen. That care gave me hope, and it inspired me to give back by supporting local healthcare so that others in our community can access the same compassionate care I did. If my story resonates with you, I hope you'll consider supporting the NBRHC Foundation. Please visit nbrhcfoundation.ca or call 705-495-8125 to give. Because mental health is health. With gratitude, Tiffany Van Meer.
So today's episode, it was actually kind of interesting because the guest that we have on today, the email thread of this of when we sent it out was just Canoe Ladies - Spanish River. So today we are pleased to bring on the program Catherine Dover and Claire Buhare, which I think I got that right. You have like a super French last name, so I'm so sorry. But welcome to the program.
Thank you. No, it's perfect. And good morning, Ben, and good morning, Bill.
Yeah, you know what? This is kind of serendipitous because the way I met these three seniors and an adult, and that's how they identified themselves on the train platform at Cartier north of Sudbury, because all of us were getting on the famed Bud car from Sudbury to White River, and in this case, we were all going on canoe excursions. And here were these four aliens, but no, they were four ladies awaiting, as we all were, to do their canoe trip on the Spanish River, which we're going to talk about on the Backroads Build podcast today. And I thought, oh, this is kind of an eclectic kind of group visually. And so I approached them and as I normally do, and found out that they are indeed three seniors and an adult. And then, of course, they defined the adult. The adult in the room is Claire, Ben, just so you know. And we'll find out about their motivations to do this. Because I think the theme of the podcast today is, why people continue to do this, or why they do this, and why do they go to the great outdoors into wilderness settings. So that's the kind of way to get started. And welcome to you both again. And Claire, how did this? We're going to come back to Claire, but Catherine, I should say, how did this start with your group of the other two seniors? We'll say.
Oh, it's been many years of canoe tripping with kids. We were high school teachers, and we often camped and took kids on adventures. And then as we got older, we wanted to do things that were maybe a little more challenging as a group. And my first experience was with this group in 2007 on the Des Moines River. And the group has dwindled as we age. And so this year we were down to 3, but you really need 4 for a canoe trip. And the girls did the Spanish River 20 years ago and decided, well, what do you think? Can we do it again? And I said, sure, I'm in. But we needed a 4th person.
Yeah, the other two are Linda and Christy, and they're not with us today, but they're with us today in mind, or in spirit, anyway. And so, Claire, how did you? Because you're the adult in the room, but a little bit of a sidebar story? How did you come to? I think it's 8 years now, and you're a Canadian citizen. How did you come to Canada, and then how did you come to meet the 3 seniors?
I'm going to try to make it short, but. I'm friend from France, and I had the opportunity 8 years ago to move to Canada for work, and also because I wanted to improve my English, so decided to move to the English part of this country, wonderful country. So, and then I met some French people. They became my friends, and through them I met many Canadians, and Catherine was a part of them. And so she became a friend, and I have to say more than this now. And in 2021, I wanted to come back to France, but at the last minute decided to stay in Canada. And I already got my resident permanent card. And then in 2024, decided to get my citizenship, which I got last year in October. So I'm really proud. I love this country and its people. And through Catherine, obviously, I met her friends. And so there's this, here I am, doing a canoe trip with three lovely ladies. And for such an adventure. So I enjoyed it, obviously. Yeah.
So what did you think about, Claire, what did you think about going into this? I mean, you hadn't done this before. I know that. So what was kind of the intrepidation? I don't want to call it anxiousness. That's an overused term, but...
I guess I still have this kind of kids feeling. I'm going to tell you maybe and use some words like this, but I feel like being Indiana Jones or kind of, wanted to, watch so many documentaries about Canada when I was a kid. And in France, we have often French, documentaries about Canada, but they are all about the west part of the country, with the mountains and, this kind of thing, the rivers and fish and bears and, mooses. And so I just wanted to live that once in my life. And so I had this opportunity with these ladies to do it. And so when they offered me to come, I was just like, okay, I'm in. I wanted to see that. And we spent 4 days without seeing anyone, which is now impossible to live that in France anymore.
Exactly. I'm glad you mentioned Indiana Jones, because we had Canada's Indiana Jones, Adam Schultz, the author, on the Backroads Bill podcast. And actually, his podcast went live yesterday, and his new book's coming out. And so you are, yes, indeed, Indiana Jones type, because when we go out, we are adventurers, and we don't know, all the planning in the world can happen, but we don't know about the variables that can occur out there, one being weather. But I know, because I was on the river at that time as well, the weather blessed us all for those days. Catherine, tell us about the planning for the trip and why you selected the Spanish River. And for the listeners and viewers on all the platforms, is that the Spanish River is a river that empties into Lake Huron, and it is a long river. The headwaters is near Biscotasing, and you did 55 kilometers from the forks down to the elbow. But tell us about the planning of that, Catherine, and river selection. I know the ladies had done it 20 years ago, and that was the challenge to go back, because there must have been some attraction to going down that river again.
Yeah, it was attractive to us because we like the ease of river canoeing also. You go with the river. It's not maybe as onerous as, 6 or 8 hours of paddle on a canoe, in a canoe on a lake. And so this time we were looking for something that would be flowing, but not too challenging. We psyched ourselves for 4 portages after looking at the river, knowing, okay, we can manage that. Older backs, older knees. Christy had a couple of braces on her knees. I've got a lot less muscle mass than I used to. And Linda, being 76, she didn't want to be carrying canoes on portages. So that was one thing that we were looking at, is fewer portages. And the idea of being really remote, like far enough away that we might not see any people.
Yeah, no, exactly. I mean, we went up a little further, and Cameron Welts, the owner of Shooting Star Camp, he's been on the podcast as well. His episode is not yet released, and it will come up before yours is released. Another two canoeists got off at Sinker, where we got off, and they would have encountered the same thing. We also did not see anyone on the river. So that's a wonderful aspect, because I really like Claire's comments earlier about in France that would never happen. You know, for us to get away from it all, the concept, and go into wilderness. I mean, that's part of the solitude and peace and quiet, and we're looking for. And other than the sound of the train bend that goes back and forth from Sudbury to White River and return, and the freight trains, you pretty much are out there in a, I'm going to call it, by latitude, you don't have to go to the end of the world to get there. So
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah.
what did you think about, well, again, and Catherine, your prose here in one of the emails to me, I love the feeling. I love feeling the power of the water and the reminder to relax and let this majestic river lead the way. Less about powering the paddle and more about flowing with Mother Nature. And this is what I really like. I really think the river shows us the way and pulls us in the right direction. You want to talk about that a bit?
Yeah, I was a bit worried that I hadn't been on this kind of water for a while. And our last few trips were kayak trips up to Philip Edward Island. And so I was anxious a bit about reading the water. Am I going to be strong enough to, draw in the right direction or whatever? But once you get in the canoe again, and you can get that feeling that the river wants you to go around the rock. It doesn't really want you to go over it. That, it's more about letting go than trying to control.
Yeah, interesting. And then campfire and cookouts make us feel like kids again, and we spend hours laughing and giggling like we were all 13 years old. I love that description. You should be a fiction writer. But Claire, how did you feel about that? Because again, campfires and cookouts, I mean, that kind of new genres, so to speak.
Yeah, well, I had in the past, I camped sometimes, not this way, obviously, Well, everything was ready, well organized, and Christy for that. Christy for that was really great. She organized everything, packed everything. Every day we had a different dinner, lunch, So it was great. The only thing I had to do was to look for some wood to make a fight. Where in France it's forbidden now to make a fire like this in the nature. So no campfire. So it's as I said. I felt like in the middle of nowhere, along the river, just the trees, some birds, friends. Wow. I don't know if I have enough words so far, to describe the feeling of that. Right now I have goosebumps. It's like magical,
Well, yeah, I'm glad you're having those goosebumps, because I get them all the time when I talk about, and for years and years I've talked about vitamin N for nature, and Catherine again in her prose, she says, the forests and the clear water were like medicine for my mind and body. And I think maybe both of you want to talk about that, but Catherine first, about that feeling that we want to have when we get out there. I mean, it is, doctors now prescribe vitamin N for nature, and we don't have to go very far, although the group lives in that Kitchener Guelph area, but still you don't have to go very far to get this dose of this, Catherine.
Yeah, and having not just an afternoon, but being, 4 consecutive days. By the end of it, your nervous system is downregulated. You're just used to the color green or the grays and browns of the woods. And I do feel like I've been de-stressed. I've let go And I'm, kind of at a really nice place to feel like I can come home and start up again.
Yeah. Claire.
Yeah, I just say that nature, Mother Nature is just powerful. You never know when you leave, you never know what you are going to get. But when you're back, you have this green feelings. It's like not anymore blood, but green blood in in your body, or kind of. It's, I don't know. And the fact that you ask all these questions to me now make me going back to live the moment. I have a lot of pictures coming up now, and it's just powerful.
Yeah, I think I'll use that green blood. I've got green blood. So that is not lost on Backroads Bill, that's for sure. Ben.
It's just funny when you guys were talking about the Bud car and you're describing all these different characters. It reminded me of almost like a sitcom, like a Cheers-esque on the Bud. You know what I mean? On the Bud car,
on the train. Absolutely, there are characters on the train. I found these 4 characters on the platform, and they were on the train. And
there you go.
Their energy, their chi at the time, Ben, was overwhelming. That's why I was immediately drawn to them. I think I made a remark about that actually, but they were primed and ready, and you could tell they carried it all the way through, and in the responses, and of course they're on the podcast. But anyway,
and the Bud car itself is a very unique thing in Canada, and I would say like not in the world, but it is one of the last remaining of its kind. And so I wanted to get both of your takes on that experience from somebody who's from here and who I'm imagined has been on there before, and then somebody obviously who's not from the country.
Yeah, that whole aspect of getting on and off the train. And I know it's a lure for me, but let's hear it from the two of you.
Okay, well, I'll start. I had never taken the train. The girls had described it, and it was exactly the way they described it. It was so much fun in that people were really helpful. I didn't realize there was going to be so much help and assistance getting all that gear up onto the train. The people that were employed on the train were perfect for the job in that they wanted to be there as much as we did. At least that's the feeling we had. And it was so nice to see other people that were not necessarily getting off where we were, but that were actually going on the river to do something. And we were really curious and looked around at the way they had packed their gear, and we were chatty, and we did stand out. We were wearing our pink T-shirts with the logo on them, of which Claire, now at the end of the trip, we decided we're going to make one for her too.
Yeah, well, you have those shirts on, and of course they were looking resplendent at the time on the platform and stuck out in a good way. And okay, Claire, over to you.
To me, it's just like smiling people, other than helping people. Obviously, they were helping people, but smiling people. Can you imagine like a French woman like me, being in Canada in middle of nowhere with a train coming to me? I loaded the canoe, and then a few minutes later, I was in the middle of the forest and in Canada. I'm just like, am I dreaming? Am I dreaming? It was a real dream to me to live, really. And I'm really glad I made it, and I just hope I will have more now, because it's like becoming addict to. I'm becoming addict to it.
It's almost that time of year. Early mornings at the rink, fresh notebooks and backpacks, and a community gearing up for another great season of varsity sports. At Source for Sports North Bay, we're proud to be part of it all. Whether it's finding your kid's first pair of skates, gearing up for tryouts, or outfitting your team for the season ahead, we've got you covered. Because here, we're not just a sports store, we're neighbors, coaches, teammates, and fans. And we're proud to cheer you on every shift, step, and stride of the way. Visit Source for Sports North Bay at 1321 Fisher Street, and let us help you along your way. It's so interesting though, because like Canada, it's so huge, right? So when you look at Europe, you have a couple hours till you get to a new country, really, right? And it's just Canada. It's like you can go out east or out west and you get an entirely different feel. Even if you go where you guys are, if you go like a couple hours north, even to the Muskoka areas, right? It's a completely different vibe, different feel than from Toronto down to like the border.
Yeah, Europe is at this time really busy, with more than 300 million people. You have Canada is a country with 38 million people, 40 million people. You can't imagine how lucky you are. And I think you can't imagine how lucky you are to have such a country.
Yeah, and I think at some point where we are in North Bay, I'm pretty sure, I don't know if this is still a thing, but we had the most amount of like hectares per person or like square kilometer per person. So like if you looked at how big our area was and then what our population size was, that ring a bell, Bill?
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Absolutely.
Which is kind of a really interesting thing to think about, which I think about anytime because my sister used to live in Kitchener, and like going down there, it's always kind of a shock. Kitchener's interesting because it's busy, but it's also not as bustly as like a Toronto area, right? So it's always kind of interesting to go down. But I had this one question for Claire because it's fascinating for somebody to come from an entirely different culture, different language, and everything. And I've talked to a lot of people who are from Quebec or they're French speaking, and they go over to France and they can't really. It's hard for them to speak French there because it's a completely different. Everything is different there. Yes, it's the same language, but everything's different. So I'm curious. I've never had the chance to ask somebody this, but what is the experience like for somebody who is from France speaking what you would consider more of a pure French or like more traditional French to come here? What was that experience like culturally?
Well, for sure, the first instinct of French people is to say we have the pure French, which I think it's wrong at the end of the day. It's just a different, it's French from France and it's French from Quebec. It's like the English from UK and the English from Canada or the English from United States at the end. The Quebecois accent is, for French people, is a bit like interesting, nice and funny. But I know that when I come to Quebec, and I used to travel to Quebec for work, and I know that my French accent is funny for them too. So it's interesting to see that obviously it's a French that went to a different road from the past than it is now in France. But I think the thing is when we met, we laugh. We are just like a bit, how to say?
Tête-à-tête?
Yeah.
Proud.
Yeah, proud. But we are both, drinking the same, spending a time to have a drink and to just to speak about it. But we are from the same
Origin.
Yeah, origin. So.
I want to get back to the river, and a quick shout out to Wayne at Fox Lake Lodge. And for anyone considering the Via Bud Car, I'm also haven't written the stories yet, but I will. I know it's going to be a 2-part story. I'm also interviewed to date Wayne at Fox Lake Lodge, but also the owner and originator of Adventure Maps, which he used on the Spanish River, and Cameron Welch from Shooting Star, and a host of others, because this is a kind of an interesting wilderness package, Ben. As you said, you get on and off the train. Is definitely an attraction for that. And I've been on the train 3 times, 3 times in the last year. And I there's something about it. And it's a great way, if you did nothing else, as I did on the other 2 trips, and just go out in winter and summer to see the landscape, you really do get a good appreciation of Canada's landscape. What did you see along the river, the Spanish River? Because we need to highlight that a bit more, that really maybe compared to other trips, Catherine. You described Georgian Bay out of Phillip Island, and so maybe some thoughts about what the 2 of you saw on the river.
I think the highlight of the train is to actually see where you're going, but in the other direction. And so it was really nice when I think you went to the engineer and he stopped for us to see the falls. That was spectacular. And then as we were coming down, we saw those falls, of course, from a different angle. And just going in along the train, getting into more intense forest, more of the natural wildlife. And Yeah, and then the river itself, as we came down, I loved that there were so many changes. The fast flowing water, and then some spots where it was reedy and tall, and little bays off to the side that were quiet, and we could see ducks. We saw some eagles. The rock face at the cliff was beautiful too. That night we enjoyed the stars and looking out at this huge rock face that we hadn't seen earlier. So the fact that it was ever changing, just around the river bend from the Pocahontas movie, I was inspired to sing that song from my kids' youth. I know.
Yeah, exactly. Ben, I want you to know I do have the power to stop the train because we did to see this waterfall. But Claire, what were your impressions?
Only in Canada. Only in Canada you can stop a train for people inside the train to take the time to watch a fall. Only in Canada. And what I enjoyed as well, it's the silence of the river, I'd say. The silence. And you paddle and you see a curve, and I'm just like, okay, what I'm going to see after the curve? And it's another landscape. It's another cliff. It's another rock. It's another tree. It's another highway of water. It's another, it's poetic. It's just like.
Yeah, it is indeed poetry, and just. I know Catherine mentioned the wildlife, and Ben this morning, and I had wondered within Sammy de Champlain Provincial Park in the Canadian Ecology Centre where I am, and because of the storm on June 21st, there's been a lack of wildlife. But this morning, at just before 6 a.m., the wolves were howling, and that put a great big smile on my face because they're back, and because their home is altered as my home has been altered as well. But Catherine, we're not 23 anymore, but why do you continue to do this, and maybe what's next? I've got a couple of ideas for your group actually, but
we love the ideas.
But why do you do it?
We're motivated because we can, and while we still can, let's do it. There's a certain urgency, maybe, that we want. There's so many places to go and so many things to see, but if there's a group and we're still able to, we motivate each other. And Claire had that great word. She said, how do you say it in English? Entraide. And it's like this mutual support. Like if one person isn't great with their knees, well, somebody else can carry that piece of equipment. Or if somebody else is really good at getting all the meal prep going, well, that's what Christy did. So everybody kind of had not a role, but were able to fill in the gaps. And we don't let the other one feel their weakness if they think they have one. And so we are getting together again on Friday, and we'll probably be talking about our next trip. We'll get together as a group and do a little guess where tour on Friday to celebrate a friend's birthday. And so it'll just be in a car, but we'll be talking about the next trip that we want to do. And I think if we look at each other and we think, well, she can do it, well, then I can do it, especially if we're in different generations.
Yeah, no, and maybe I'll share a couple of my ideas, but I like that urgency. And Ben, the podcasts are time sensitive in a sense, and Jane Goodall passed away yesterday. But one of her remarks in a previous interview was, I have urgency now because I'm speeding up because there's less years left in my life. And she made it to 91 years of age. But this was a comment she made just a couple of years ago about speeding up. And yes, I guess there is. While we can do it, there is some urgency. And Claire, your motivation for the next time around, what's that?
Well, I want to live again, and to get this feeling, to get that feelings I got during that trip. I want to live that again. I want to live the adventure side. I want to live the Indiana Jones adventure side. The beauty of the nature, yes, and get the adrenaline. How do you say?
Yeah, adrenaline.
Adrenaline again.
Gosh, yeah.
And I just want to do it again with them only, because they bring me joy. They are so confident when they are together, Catherine said at the beginning of this moment, she was like a bit stressed about not doing. I was not, because I was with the best. So I was not. I didn't know what to expect, but I was not scared. She said, draw, I draw. And, we were at some point, facing like rocks. I was just like, okay, let's go. Okay. And I was not scared because, I could see the river was not, there was not too much water. I know how to swim. We had to face some situations, but no, never I was scared about what could happen, or I even didn't think that it could happen something with them. It was only joy, laughing, adrenaline, pleasure, the pleasure, yeah.
Avec plaisir. Ben.
Yeah, I was going to go kind of as we wrap things up, back to kind of what you were talking about a little bit. Like, so obviously, whenever you do something, you learn lessons, and you hopefully you learn from them, and you move and you apply it to the next thing. What was, because each of you, of course, have a different not opinion, but experience of what happened. So what did each of you take away from this that you want to apply to the next adventure? Maybe it's something you learned about yourself. Maybe it's something you learned about the water or anything like that. What is that one thing?
Well, I confirmed that, I can do this. I feel like, yes, after doing it, that, I'm still in the game. I can still do this, and I'm getting ready for the next one. So, yeah.
Yes, it's the same. I would say it was my first time, and I didn't know if I could paddle 4 days in the row. And it was tough, I have to say, because, I never did that before. And I used to say that sometimes when I see Canadians, they are born with a ski on their, or skate in your feet, and paddle in your hands. And sometimes, I was not. And when I see Linda, 76, doing that, I'm just like, okay, I have to do it. I must do it, and so, so this is what I learned, the strength these women have. I'm just impressed, and I want to be the same at their age. So I want to do it again and again and again. Yeah.
You did it for sure, absolutely. And I'm very much impressed. And Ben, you never know who you're going to meet out there in the great outdoors. And again, this story.
I'm telling you, dude, the Bud Car sitcom with Backroads Bill.
Yeah, 3 seniors and an adult going down going down the Spanish River and embracing vitamin N and doing what I think all of us wanted to do, be outside in the great outdoors. And thanks very much for being on the Backroads Bill podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, a big thank you to Claire and Catherine for jumping on with us. And, I got to give a lot of credit to Claire. Trying something new, it's always hard. And it's not just the experience, but also the socializing of being able to go out there with friends and experience this beautiful river and canoe trip. And again, going outside of your comfort zone, which is just really cool. And a really cool story that she'll remember for the rest of her life. And I'm sure she'll be on many more of these excursions, but there's nothing like your first when it comes to this. And of course, what Catherine does with the other ladies, it really proves that you're only as old as you feel. And it's great to see these women go out and continue to experience and explore nature. So if you enjoyed this episode, you can check out more episodes of the Backroads Bill podcast every single Wednesday morning. The video version is available on the North Bay Echo YouTube channel. The audio version is available wherever you find your podcast, whether it be Apple Podcast or Spotify, Amazon, etc. You can find us there. And you can also find this alongside many other podcasts on the North Bay Echo website, northbayecho.ca. Also, check out our socials at North Bay Echo, where you can see little short clips, episode release content, and more all across the Echo network as well. And check out our newsletter, Echo Essentials, which comes to your inbox every single week. It's free, and again, keeps you connected with all things Echo, as well as some of the stuff happening in the North Bay area. So that wraps things up for me and Bill. We will be back again next week for another Backroads Adventure.